guys, Jeff Sheets here from Disc Dog University. Just thought I would talk a little bit about the two newest dog discs that are available for our disc dog sport. And these are the Max Q discs from Hyperflite. So these are designed to be distance discs. Now, it says right on here, extreme distance unleashed. So will they unleash your distance? We'll talk about that. I'm going to go over the details of the discs. I'll do a little bit of throwing. I'll also do a durability test to see how they do. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you my two predictions on what I think will happen with these discs. Now, one thing you may hear or may have heard is that these discs are more like a disc golf disc, right? So that freaks some people out because we are told don't throw disc golf discs to your dog. So why is that? If you're not a disc golfer, you don't even know what that means probably. So I'm going to give you a brief overview. In disc golf, there are really three types of discs. There is a putter, which has a big fat profile there on the end. This is what we throw close up to try to get it in the basket. There's a mid-range disc that's a little bit narrower. And then there is a driver with a very skinny, narrow end, and that's made to cut through the wind and go far, right? So there are really three reasons we tell people don't throw golf discs to your dog. Number one, they are oftentimes much heavier. So a golf disc can be 175 grams. So your average disc dog disc is anywhere from 100 to 140 grams, in that range. But having said that, there are lighter weight disc golf discs. I throw a lot of 150 disc golf discs, so it doesn't always hold true. The other thing is there are a lot of different kinds of plastics with disc golf discs. You'll find them in a different array of plastics. And some of these plastics are really hard. They're not what you would want your dog biting into for sure. And the last thing is something like this driver with this really narrow edge. You wouldn't want that flying through the air at high speed and your dog catching it. So those are really why we say don't throw a golf disc to your dog. Now, obviously, some golf discs would probably be fine for your dog, but unless you know the plastic, the weight, the profile, it's best to just tell folks don't throw a golf disc to your dog. And also, we have a ton of great disc dog discs specifically for that purpose from Hero, Hyperflite, Discovering the World, and others. So we want to stick with that. So back to our Max Q discs, right? What makes these discs unique? Well, the big thing is they are narrower. They have a narrower profile or a narrower rim than a regular dog disc. So they're a little bit more like our golf discs in that regard. So theoretically, a narrower rim will cut through the wind and go farther, faster. So if we look at this Max Q disc compared to other discs, here the Max Q is on the right and Skyhound's or Hyperflite CS disc on the left. Here the Max Q is on the right and a Hero Super Swirl on the left. Now if we look at it compared to some disc golf discs, we could see that compared to a putter on the left, the putter is pretty similar rim. If we compare it to a couple of mid-range golf discs, like on the left is a Mako 3, or in this case, on the left is a Rock Classic. So those are a little bit closer to what the Max Q looks like. If we compare it to a driver, a disc golf driver on the left, you can see that disc golf driver is a way narrower edge, which is going to make it cut through the wind, fly faster, and go farther. So these were sort of designed to be a little bit more like our golf discs. So how does that play out? Well, there are a couple things to talk about. First, let's talk about the weight of these discs. So these come in two flavors, sort of a regular standard plastic. This feels like a Hyperflite Z disc to me. And then there's this plastic, which is more like a Jaws disc. So this is more bite resistant. And this is not. We'll test that out in a little bit. So this disc is really lightweight. These that I got were between 98 and 99 grams. So that's lighter than even Hero Airs or Hero Extras that can be in that 105 to 110 type range. So it's pretty lightweight disc. Feels honestly a little flimsy. This disc on the opposite side of things is pretty heavy. So these are 150 grams. Once again, a usual Jaws is 135 to 140. So this is 150. So this is a heavy disc. It is definitely bite resistant. It's that type of plastic, but it's much heavier. The other thing about flight characteristics we'll talk about is they fly different depending upon what the wind is happening. Really gives you two different options, which is kind of cool to have options. So I took these out. I basically just threw about a dozen of each, and I had a little tailwind. And I can tell you the lightweight disc, a couple things about it, it definitely flipped on me quite a bit. In other words, when I throw it, when we say a disc flips, it's when you throw it and it flips off. I'm a right-handed backhand thrower, so it means it flips and goes to the right. It's understable disc. This disc, on the other hand, definitely did not. It fell off to the left. This disc is stable to overstable. So usually this disc would be harder for a beginner to throw, because to get this thing to fly well, you really have to put a ton of snap and spin on it. This one, I think, would be much easier for a beginner to throw. I was able to get this disc out pretty far. I had a tailwind, but I had a couple of these out at 100 yards, which is far for me. I'm not a big, huge thrower. So I think my best catch in competition with a regular dog disc is about 87 yards. So getting a 100-yard throw out there is more like my disc golf throw than my dog disc throw. So in that regard, these definitely went farther. This one, with the tailwind I had, I wasn't able to get it more than 75 or 80 yards. However, I think a big arm, a big thrower could really probably put this out there a long ways. Whether or not their dog could catch it, we'll talk about that later. So that's really the gist of these two, is they are really two completely different things. They have a similar shape. They're the same size, diameter as a Jaws. They would fit the same thing, or a CS disc. But they definitely go. They're much faster discs, so that's the big thing. When you get that more narrow rim, the disc goes faster. So that's something I think a lot of folks will struggle with. They're going to get this disc too fast for their dog. So if you got a fast dog, probably be in good shape. Otherwise, you're going to have to really learn to get a lot of spin on it and get it to float out there much better. So that's the big difference between these two, the weight, big difference in weight. So how do they hold up? Well, I took these discs out. Super windy here today, actually. So I just took them out and I threw 3 throws each to my dog Zorro. He's a border collie. He's a pretty hard chomper for a border collie, but he's just a little 30-pound border collie, so he's not like a big Mal or something. This disc held up what? 3 throws, no dents. There's a couple little spots, but really no dents, nothing. I mean, it held up like a Jaws, no problem. This disc, on the other hand, did not fare so well. So this is what happened after 3 throws. You can see there are 4 holes punctured completely through it. Big chunk out of the rim here, a couple scrapes there. So that's 3, 20-yard throws. This disc would not survive a round of toss and fetch with Zorro. So if you got a hard biting dog, a heavy chomper, this disc will not work for you. This one probably will. So, a couple of options there anyway. Now, what do I see happening with these discs? For sure you should try them out. I mean, they're really good discs, but I'll tell you my 2 predictions. One is, I believe this disc can help someone throw toss and fetch a little farther. If you're struggling to get your toss and fetch throw, past 30 yards, this disc may help you get there, because with barely flicking this disc, it will go 40 to 50 yards very easily. However, if you got a hard biting dog, you're probably not going to be able to utilize that. This one's pretty good as well for toss and fetch, but once again, it is hard to stay floating. Like I said, I would love to have seen a little bit more dome on it. It's a pretty flat disc, which means it goes and just sinks, right? I think it could work for some folks. It could work thrown into a headwind. It's pretty heavy, 150. I know some people aren't as comfortable throwing a 150 weight disc to their dog. It's understandable. If that gets going fast, That's a pretty big chunk of plastic flying through the air. So what's my second prediction? My second prediction is this. Unfortunately, I have a difference in opinion from the Skyhounds folks on distance competitions. They like to have a fixed start, which means your dog cannot cross the line before you throw the disc, right? So I've been to countless Skyhounds extreme distance contests where there was a big tailwind and everybody wanted to throw with the wind, and there was very few discs caught all day, simply because the dogs can't get to it. The tailwind pushes that disc faster, and the dogs just don't get there. So it's not very much fun to watch those competitions. It's definitely not very much fun to play in. Really cool to see some big throwers throw really far with a big tailwind, but it's hard for the dogs to catch up to the disc. When there's a free start in a distance competition, then the dog can get out there and catch way more discs. My prediction is you're going to see even less catches when you're throwing these discs because they're simply faster. They go through the air much faster than a Jaws or a Z disc. They have a narrower profile, so they cut through the wind faster. In golf discs, we have speed, so they rate golf discs as a 7-speed or a 9-speed or a 10-speed or a 13-speed, depending upon how fast they fly. And it usually has to do with the narrower the rim, the faster that disc is going to go. A few other factors, but that's kind of one we can look at. So here, when we look at this, how narrow this is compared to a CS or a Jaws, it makes sense. It's going to go through the air a lot faster. So if we already have a big tailwind and we have dogs not being able to get to a disc in time to catch it, I would be surprised if we don't see even less catches. So unless they change their stance on letting a dog get out there and do a free start, I think we'll see a lot less catches. You may see some long distance competitions that allow these, if they do end up allowing those discs. And right now, I don't know that any others that do besides Skyhounds. You could possibly see some really long throws, especially with this heavy disc, from some of the bigger arms in the biz, because I think you could really get this out there if you had the ability to get a huge amount of spin on it and throw it far, because it is very much like a golf disc. It feels like a Mako 3 to me. So anyway, that is our Max Q discs. The last thing I want to say is, once again, I differ with the way Skyhounds runs their extreme distance events, but I will say this: I really applaud the Skyhounds and the Hyperflite guys for doing something different in the sport, bringing a new disc shape, right? We tend to just play with the same thing and do the same stuff. So I appreciate the fact that they're trying to innovate, trying to create something a little bit different. I think they came close with these. I don't know who did the R&D on this. I would love to see that. I would love to know who was doing our R&D out here, if it was disc golfers or disc doggers or a combination. Haven't seen that information, so I don't know. I think they came really close. I think with a few modifications, it could be a really cool disc. But once again, hats off to those guys for innovation and trying to do something different and bring a little something different to our sport. I'm really anxious to see what our friends at Hero do, if they follow suit and try to come up with something that is a dog-safe disc that maybe has a shot at flying a little bit farther and doing some different things. So anyway, that's my take on the Max Q discs. I would definitely suggest you get a few and try them. You may like the way they throw. The rim is much smaller. If you have smaller hands, the rim might work for you. Might be something you can use and try out. So go check them out, and we'll see how they go throughout the season. If we ever get back to a season, we'll see how the season goes. See what kind of throws are happening with these discs. So there you go. Once again, I'm Jeff from Disc Dog University, and thanks for checking this out.